In April 2020, the CEO of the International Air Transport Association, or IATA, remarked that the aviation industry has never seen a downturn this deep before, likening the COVID-19 pandemic to a war, which has brought death and economic devastation. The air travel outlook at the start of the new decade was promising. Demand was surging worldwide, fueled by a growing middle class in emerging economies. But with airplanes grounded and borders closed because of the pandemic, many airlines and airports are using this period of inactivity to relook at the future of air travel. The days of packed aircraft and limited legroom may be a thing of the past as social distancing measures kick in. With economies reopening, airlines are implementing a slew of measures to ensure the safety of passengers.
As a passenger, my greatest concern is actually my fellow passengers, how far they'll be seated next to me.
I think knowing a background check on where the travellers have actually gone through and whether or not they pose as a risk to be actually more isolated than the rest.
To that end, carriers such as American Airlines and Japan Airlines are blocking seats on board its flights, while Emirates is pre-allocating seats between individual passengers or family groups. But what does the reduction in passenger capacity mean for airlines? Before the pandemic, air travel trends suggested that there would be 8.2 billion air passengers in 2037, nearly double the 4.2 billion passengers reported in 2018. The biggest demand for air travel was projected to come from the Asia-Pacific region. China was poised to overtake the United States as the largest air passenger market, with India, Indonesia, and Thailand making inroads by 2030. That rosy outlook was all but gone in IATA's April forecast, which it deemed catastrophic. I spoke to Brian Pierce from IATA to find out more about the 2020 forecast.
The past few months has clearly been the worst period that aviation has been to. We've never seen airlines grounding their operations. April marked the low point when international travel virtually stopped. We saw air travel down 98% compared to where it was a year earlier. We would expect in the second half of the year to see some recovery. We think airlines are going to probably lose an unprecedented $84 billion in 2020.
According to IATA, full-year passenger revenue in 2020 is expected to fall by 55% compared to 2019, while there will be a 48% decrease in air traffic. This is reflected in the plunge in scheduled flights globally. While there was 0.8% more flights in January 2020 compared to the same period in 2019, that number plunged by more than 65% year-on-year in June.
The ability of airlines to operate really depends on whether the health authorities have either unlocked the economies or allowed people to travel. We're seeing domestic air travel markets opening first. China, for example, in the United States. Domestic air travel will be enough to kickstart the airline industry in some countries.
As travel restrictions ease, the safety of passengers is paramount to avoid another wave of infections. Qatar Airways has continued its international flights during the pandemic, despite the plunge in air travel, its group CEO tells me.
We have never stopped flying. We were the largest international operator for the last 3 months from March until April and May.
Besides putting in place the safety recommendations by IATA, Qatar Airways is also reviewing its meal services to minimize contact between its cabin crew and passengers. Similar measures are also in place for other international carriers such as Singapore Airlines, which has suspended its in-flight meals for some routes, while British Airways will be replacing in-flight meals with meal boxes instead.
We have given all our cabin crew training in how to make sure we identify if there is anybody that has symptoms on an aeroplane, and secondly, how to handle issues when there are a risk. All items are very well sterilized, again using also UV. Qatar Airways is the only international airline that once you are traveling in premium cabin, you are completely enclosed. So there is no need of social distancing because you are not in contact with anybody that is sitting next to you.
Flying is now a necessity and not a luxury. The disruption to air travel has affected business and families alike. IATA's safety recommendations, done in collaboration with the Airports Council International, include best practices for airlines, airports, and local authorities to resume commercial flights. From pre-flight, in-flight, and arrival, safety recommendations include contact tracing, the use of personal protective equipment, and enabling contactless services at customs. With airlines restarting flights and more countries easing travel restrictions, could things be looking up in the second half of 2020? Patrick Nolan, an aviation technology consultant, says that the pandemic has disrupted pilot training.
The pandemic's biggest impact really has been in commercial aviation. What won't change in aviation is the focus on safety, a continual increase in automation. Our technology and I guess our capabilities, we need to be agile enough to be able to move with that change in focus, because when the flag goes back up and there's going to be a lot more training required, then training efficiency and supporting the instructor with new and usable data is going to be critical. And that may move from pilot training right through to potentially reduced crew in aircraft. There's so many things that may happen now.
With costs increasing and revenues falling, there may be a consolidation in the airline sector, says Professor Keith Mason from the Centre for Air Transport Management. While those receiving government aid are more likely to survive, fully independent airlines may go out of business.
We may end up with a smaller airline industry, which may mean that there's less choice for consumers and that prices may go up, and that may flatten demand. I don't see any stability in international air travel until we get to a point where the whole of the market has been able to control the impact of COVID-19. The growth out of the challenges will be piecemeal and localized and between countries where they have been able to control the virus. The industry will come out of this. It will be leaner. There will be fewer players, but there will be an industry. It will continue to drive economic activity on a global basis.
One thing is clear, sweeping changes will be needed for the airline sector to adapt to a world post-pandemic. As airlines and airports gear up to resume operations, how we travel in the future will change, for better or for worse. Hey guys, let us know what you think air travel is going to look like in the future. Thanks for watching and don't forget to subscribe. And in the meantime, do stay safe.